Hello everyone, welcome to GS Core. In this session, we'll be discussing about one very important report released recently, and that is IPCC's 6th Assessment Report Part 2. Right? So we know that climate change is a reality. We are already witnessing various climate change related phenomena. For example, there are recurrent droughts, there are recurrent floods, heat wave conditions, flood is also there, cold wave conditions are also there, there is rise in sea level, glaciers are retreating. So all these are the effects of climate change that we have already started witnessing. So have you ever wondered who gives all these kind of impacts of climate change, or who has assessed all these impacts? So these impacts are assessed by one of the important bodies formed in 1988 at the global level, and that is IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Right? So in this report, we'll be discussing about the major findings of the IPCC, what it says about the threats that we have related to climate change. Moreover, we will also discuss certain India-specific findings of IPCC's 6th report, right? But before that, we will understand IPCC, what is the background, what are the reports that it has published till now. Till now, it has published 5 assessment reports, and also they have given certain special reports as well. So before starting our discussion of this 6th report of IPCC, we will be discussing about the background of the 6th report, and also we will discuss about IPCC as well as its previous reports. So let us start with this session. First of all, background of this report. So this report is the second part of the 6th assessment report. First part was given in 2021, wherein IPCC analyzed the scientific background of climate change. Right? So the first part report was released last year, and it analyzed the scientific background of the climate change. Second part is about the threats, vulnerabilities of the world with respect to climate change. And the third part, which will be released later this year, will be about the solutions, what we can do as far as mitigation and adaptation of climate change is concerned. Right? So that is the background of the 6th assessment report. Now let us understand few important aspects related to Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So this is a kind of think tank which was formed in 1988 by World Meteorological Organization and UNEP, the United Nations Environment Program, right? And the objective for the formation of IPCC was to provide scientific basis of climate change, to understand the threats and vulnerabilities related to climate change, and also to provide solutions, or to highlight the solutions related to climate change mitigation and adaptation, right? And the reports under which all these aspects are covered by IPCC, they act as one of the policy guidelines for governments across the world, as well as it also acts as the basis for the negotiations at UNFCCC, right? So the reports given by IPCC, they not only act as a guideline for policy making, but also it is one of the important basis for the negotiations at UNFCCC, right? So these are the two prime results of the IPCC's reports. They act as a guideline for the governments to come up with climate related policies, and also for the negotiations under UNFCCC, right? So that is about the IPCC's background. So till now, IPCC has come up with various important reports. Primarily, they are called as assessment reports. So first assessment report was given in 1990. First assessment report. First assessment report was given in 1990. And in this report, IPCC highlighted the role of human activities, especially those human activities which are leading to release of greenhouse gases, right? So that was highlighted in the first assessment report of the IPCC, and they also said that under that report, there is immediate need to take certain action to reduce the release of greenhouse gases due to human activities, right? And this is not an accident that the report of 1992 acted as a basis for the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, UNCED, which is popularly known as Earth Summit, right? So that was first report. Then second report, second assessment report, it was given in 1995. And this report highlighted that it is carbon dioxide, which is one of the important gases, one of the important greenhouse gases, and it is the result of anthropogenic activities, which is ultimately leading to climate change. Also, it concluded that the climate change has reached at such a level that the impact of climate change are irreversible. That means it highlighted that damage has been done already, and there are even if we take steps for the mitigation of climate change, even if we try to even if we try to reduce the release of greenhouse gases, still we will be facing the impacts of climate change. That was highlighted in the second assessment report of the IPCC. Next, and this second assessment report, it acted as a basis for Kyoto Protocol, which came into being in 1997 at United Nations, the UNFCCC's COP3 at Kyoto. Next is third assessment report. Third assessment report given in 2001, given in year 2001. So this particular report, it had the projections related to the impact of climate change that we may face in future. For example, it talked about global temperature rise in the range of 1.4 degrees Celsius to 5.8 degrees Celsius by the end of 21st century. Moreover, it also highlighted that there may be rise in sea levels at the levels of 0.1 meters to 0.9 meters per decade in this 21st century. So those were the findings of the third assessment report given by IPCC. Next, fourth assessment report. Fourth assessment report was given in year 2007. Was given in year 2007, wherein it highlighted that more than 80% of the heat that is getting trapped into the atmosphere of the earth is getting mixed with, or it is getting absorbed by the ocean bodies, and that is leading to thermal expansion of water, and that will again act as a threat with respect to rise in sea levels. So that was the highlight of this particular report, fourth assessment report. Next, fifth assessment report. Fifth assessment report was published in 2015. Was published in 2015, wherein the IPCC highlighted the human influence on the climate system. They said that the anthropogenic factors have increased the influence on the climate of the world, and the release of greenhouse gases is highest in the history of mankind. Release of greenhouse gases were highest in the history of mankind as per the report of IPCC, and that report was fifth assessment report. Moreover, this fifth assessment report also highlighted that if we want to contain temperature rise up to 2 degrees Celsius by the end of this century, by the end of 21st century, then we have the limit of only 2900 gigatons of CO2 from industrial revolution till the end of this century. That means we can release only 2900 gigatons of carbon dioxide since industrial revolution till 2100, that means by the end of this century. But this report has highlighted that we have already released, by 2011, we have already released 1900 gigatons of CO2, right? And now we are in 2022, so we can certainly say that that amount of CO2 released by human beings in Earth's atmosphere has increased, right? Or it must have increased. So these were the 5 assessment reports that IPCC gave before the 6th assessment report. Apart from these assessment reports, IPCC also gave certain special reports. So the special reports given by IPCC are: first, special report on global warming of 1.5 degree Celsius. That was the first special report given by IPCC, and it was given in 2018. Under this report, it tried to understand the feasibility of the target set by the Paris climate deal of 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature rise. We know that Paris climate deal talks about temperature rise within the level of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. So this assessment reports, this special report talks about the feasibility of this target. So as per this report, if we want to achieve that target of 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature rise by the end of this century, then we should reduce the release of greenhouse gases by 45% by 2030, and net zero emissions should be achieved by 2050. If we want to achieve 1.5 degrees Celsius target, 45% reduction of emissions should happen by 2030, and net zero emission should be achieved by 2050. Then only we'll be able to achieve this target of 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature rise restriction, right? If we want to achieve 2 degrees Celsius target, that means by the end of 21st century, if we want to restrict temperature rise up to 2 degrees Celsius, then we will have to reduce emissions by 20% by 2030, and we will have to achieve net zero emissions by 2075. Those were the assessments of IPCC under this special report. Next, IPCC also published a special report on the ocean and cryosphere in a changing climate. Special report on ocean and cryosphere in changing climate. And this report was published in year 2019. So this report is trying to understand the impact of climate change on oceans and cryosphere, that means glaciers and ice mass of the world. And as far as oceans are concerned, this report highlights that there will be increased ocean acidification, there will be increased marine heat wave conditions, there will be increased El Nino and La Nina kind of events, and these events will again threaten the marine ecosystem. Moreover, for cryosphere, it highlights that there will be reduction in the ice mass in the important cryospheric regions of the world, for example, Greenland, Antarctica, and even Himalayas, where we will witness retreat of glaciers, right? So that was highlighted by IPCC under this special report on ocean and cryosphere in changing climate. Next, there was third special report, and that report was on climate change and land. Climate change and land, special report on climate change and land. And this report, which was given in 2019, highlights the impact of climate change on land. And as per it, there will be increased degradation of land, which will ultimately results in desertification of the land. And if desertification of the land occurs, then there will be reduction in the arable area, which will in turn affect food and nutritional security. So that is about the assessment reports and special reports published by IPCC before 6th assessment report. Now, let us discuss about the 6th assessment report part 1 given by IPCC in 2021. So as per this 6th assessment report part 1, whose title was Climate Change 2021, the Physical Science Basis. The part 1 was titled as Climate Change 2021, the Physical Science Basis. And as per this report, we will breach the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature rise by 2040. By or before 2040, we will be breaching 1.5 degrees Celsius target. And then there will be catastrophic effects of that breach of the target. And if we continue the business as usual model, then by 2100, that means by the end of this 21st century, there will be rise in temperature by almost 2.7 degrees Celsius. And this has been given name Code Red for humanity. So this temperature rise is Code Red for humanity. Why? Because there will be catastrophic climatic events that we will have to witness if temperature rises up to this level. Moreover, it has also highlighted the steps that we can take to reduce temperature rise, and it has said that the temperature or the net zero emission reduction by 2050 should be achieved if we want to be on track of the temperature rise restriction in the level between 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, right? If we want to achieve that temperature rise restriction in this range, then we will have to achieve net zero emission by 2050, right? So that was highlighted. Moreover, it also says that as far as India is concerned, it says that the commitments that India has given under its nationally determined contributions are rational, and they are the commitments which are given by India, even if India is not the historic emitter of the greenhouse gases, right? So it highlighted that it is the historic emissions by the developed countries that has led to rise in temperature, and the commitments given by India are highly rational commitments, even if it is not the historic emitter of greenhouse gases, right? So that it has highlighted. Moreover, the sixth assessment report part 1 also highlighted certain India specific impacts. It said that there will be retreat of glaciers in Hindu Kush glaciers. In Hindu Kush mountains, whatever glaciers are there, there will be reduction or there will be fall in the amount of mass in those glaciers. Moreover, there will be variations in the patterns of monsoon, and as a result of variations in the patterns of monsoon, there will be recurrent drought and flood situations that India will have to witness. Also, it said that there will be rise in sea level which will harm India's coastal areas. And finally, it has also highlighted that due to rise in temperature, there will be more instances of forest fires in India. And due to more instances of forest fires in India, there may be a chance of pollution, increased pollution, especially in the northern belt, right? So that it has highlighted, and to address the problem of climate change, it also said that it is developed countries who will have to take deep cuts as far as emissions are concerned, and they will also have to abide by their commitments given under various COPs for providing funds and technologies to developing countries, right? So that is one of the solutions. Moreover, it said that no new coal plant after 2021 should be approved. And OECD countries must phase out coal by 2030 and rest of the countries by 2040. So that will help us in the reduction of the use of fossil fuels, and thus that will allow us to maintain the temperature rise within the range highlighted by Paris Climate Deal, right? And it moreover said that by 2030 there should be increased use of renewable energy, at least 4 times the use that we are doing in 2021, as this first assessment report or the first part of the 6th assessment report was given in 2021, right? So that is about the 6th assessment report part 1. Now we'll be discussing about the second part of the 6th assessment report. And this second part of the 6th assessment report has warned that multiple climate change induced disasters will occur in next 2 decades, even if strong action is taken for climate change mitigation in next 2 decades, right? That means it says that the breach of 1.5 degree Celsius target, even for short duration, will have catastrophic disasters, and those and that impact of 1.5 degree Celsius target breach will be irreversible. So that is highlighted by the second part of 6th assessment report. Moreover, this 6th assessment report has certain important findings. For example, for the first time, there is introduction of regional studies related to the impact of climate change. For example, in case of India, it has studied the impact of climate change on various cities like Mumbai. In Mumbai, there will be rise in sea level, and also there will be the impact of flooding that Mumbai will have to witness. As far as other cities are concerned, like Ahmedabad, there will be rise in heat wave conditions for these cities. For cities like Patna, Bhubaneswar, there will be heat wave conditions along with high humidity, right? So regional studies were introduced for the first time under the second part of 6th assessment report. Moreover, it also for the first time highlighted at the health impact of climate change. As per this second part, there will be increased instances of waterborne diseases and increased instances of vector-borne diseases like malaria and dengue, especially in the tropical regions of South Asia. In the tropical regions of South Asia, we will witness more instances of these vector-borne diseases. Another health impact is highlighted by the second part of sixth assessment report, and that is about the increased instances of the impacts like aggravating circulatory, respiratory, infectious and diabetic conditions. Circulatory diseases will be aggravated, respiratory diseases will be aggravated, and even infectious diseases along with diabetes will be aggravated in the times of climate change, right? So that has been highlighted by the second part of sixth assessment report. Moreover, it also highlights increasing frequency of extreme weather events all across the world. All across the world, there will be increasing frequency of extreme climatic events like droughts, floods, heat wave conditions, cold wave conditions, increased frequency as well as intensity of cyclonic storms will be witnessed by the world, right? Moreover, it says that while strong actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in near term in next 20 years would substantially reduce the threats and the projected damages, they would not eliminate them. That means even if we take actions to reduce emissions in next 20 years in short-term basis, then there will be impact. So those actions will show positive effects as far as the climate change events are concerned, but they will not eliminate the threats of climate change events. Even if we take action to reduce the impacts, to reduce the climate change impact, the climate change will occur and we will have to face the serious effects of climate change related threats, right? So that is the important feature of the sixth assessment report part 2. And finally, it says that there will be rise in sea levels. Rise in sea levels will be witnessed mainly because of two reasons. First, melting glaciers, and secondly, because of thermal expansion of water, right? So that is what the sixth assessment report part 2 highlights for the world. Moreover, it has also given certain India-specific study was carried out under this particular report, and this study says that India-specific study says that India is one of the vulnerable hotspots. As per this report, more than 45% of the world population is vulnerable to the climate change impacts, and out of that, India is one of them. India is considered as vulnerable hotspot for the climate change. Moreover, as we have already pointed out, there is area-wise assessment of the impact of climate change. For example, on Mumbai, there is a risk of high rise in sea level and also flooding. In Ahmedabad, there will be a risk of increased heat wave conditions. For other cities like Chennai, Bhubaneswar, Patna and Lucknow, there will be dangerous heat levels along with humidity, right? So that is the second point for India-specific study carried out by IPCC's sixth report part 2. Moreover, it says that there will be compromised infrastructure in the times of climate change. The infrastructure will be compromised because of the climate change events that we are going to witness. Example, in case of increased intensity of cyclonic storms, the infrastructure in the coastal regions, especially in Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, will be shattered, right? So that infrastructure will be compromised by the climate change related events, right? So these are certain important points that this report highlights as far as India is concerned. But at the same time, this report has also studied wet bulb temperature for India. So first of all, what is wet bulb temperature? So this is very important point. Wet bulb temperature. So wet bulb temperature study was carried out by the second part of IPCC 6th assessment report for India. So what is wet bulb temperature? So wet bulb temperature is the lowest temperature to which air can be cooled by evaporation of water present in air at a constant pressure, right? So wet bulb temperature is the lowest temperature at which we can ensure the evaporation of water present in air, which will have cooling effect at the constant pressure, right? So that is wet bulb temperature. And this wet bulb temperature is a limit that considers, it is a limit of temperature that considers heat and humidity beyond which humans cannot tolerate high temperatures. So this is a limit of temperature which considers both heat and humidity, and if temperature rises beyond this limit of wet bulb temperature, then it would be difficult for human beings to tolerate that temperature. And this wet bulb temperature is measured using thermometer with the bulb wrapped in a muslin cloth, right? So we cover the bulb of the thermometer with a muslin cloth, and thereby we are able to measure wet bulb temperature of a region, right? And they say that wet bulb temperature of 31 degrees Celsius is exceedingly harmful for human beings. And if wet bulb temperature increases to 35 degrees Celsius, then it becomes difficult for human beings to survive in that wet bulb temperature for more than 6 hours. If wet bulb temperature is 35 degrees Celsius, human beings won't be able to survive in that wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees Celsius for more than 6 hours, right? And as per this study of IPCC for wet bulb temperature in India, they have said that currently wet bulb temperature in India rarely exceeds 31 degrees Celsius. Currently, the wet bulb temperature in India rarely exceeds 31 degrees Celsius, and for most of the regions of India, it is in the range of 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. But it says that even if we cut down on emissions that we have promised to cut as of now, there will be a chance that for northern and coastal parts of India, there will be rise in wet bulb temperature, and it will reach up to 31 degrees Celsius by 2100. By 2100, even if we take actions to cut down the emissions based upon the promises that we have given in the current time, there will be rise in wet bulb temperature, and it will reach up to 31 degrees Celsius by 2100 for northern and coastal cities of India. And if we continue to carry out the emissions without taking any action to cut down on emissions, then there will be rise in wet bulb temperature up to 35 degrees Celsius for most parts of India, right? So if we take actions, then we'll be able to ensure that wet bulb temperature rises only up to 31 degrees Celsius. But if we do not take actions, then the wet bulb temperature will rise up to 35 degrees Celsius, wherein it would be very difficult for human beings to survive for more than 6 hours. So that is what the 6th assessment report highlights. And finally, it also talks about the steps that we can take to address or to reduce the impact of climate change. And the most important step that it highlights is of adaptation measures. We should go for adaptation measures, and adaptation measures as per IPCC are effective if taken on time, because the effectiveness of adaptation measures also reduces if temperature rises, right? But it has also recognized certain problems as far as adaptation measures are concerned. Primarily, those problems are related to political will, and the sense of urgency is not there for such adaptation measures. So that is also highlighted by the report given by IPCC recently. So that is about this report. So IPCC, it comes up with the reports, and these reports, as we have already discussed, they act as a policy guideline for governments across the world. In the second half of 2022, IPCC will publish third part of sixth assessment report, which will talk about what we can do to reduce the impacts that it has highlighted in first two reports, in first two parts of sixth assessment report, right? So that is about this session. Thank you.